Well, good evening, everybody who has chosen to spend a little bit of your evening with us tonight. I know it's beautiful out, so thank you for joining online, even though you could be outside enjoying some of the weather too. Today we are going to do what is part 2 of 3, which I know last time we said it was going to be part 1 of 2, but because we realized we had more to talk about than we could cover in 2 sessions, and we're actually turning it into 3 sessions. So we covered last month the mission of the IFMC. Today we're going to talk about the vision, and then next month we'll talk about the values. So I'm going to read the vision so you know what we're talking about today. This was also attached to the invite in the email. But the vision of the IFMC, members and loyal stakeholders unanimously attribute their unprecedented success to the IFMC environment. So you can go ahead and open that document that you got if you'd like to, but I'm going to get Greg on the video here and we'll ask him some questions. Hi, Greg.
Hello, Jackie.
Well, thanks for joining us. I know you like to spend your nice weather evenings outside as well, so it's nice that you take this time to speak with us too. We appreciate that.
Well, I enjoy it, and I'm glad to spend time with the team.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right into the vision and talking about the vision. Now, I just read it to everybody. So in your words, how would you explain that vision to someone who's unfamiliar with the IFMC?
If someone is unfamiliar with the IFMC, I think I would start by explaining that the IFMC is really more like an economy than it is a business. And that's a really important distinction. And I think I would also want to talk just a little bit about what a vision statement is. And so vision statements typically are meant to be aspirational, they're meant to be future oriented, and sometimes almost grandiose, if you will, and they're designed to be something that you may never achieve, but you can always strive for it. And so it's kind of like a North Star for the organization. And so with that understanding, then I think I would again talk about the economy and prepare or compare it maybe to the US economy and the advantages of the US economy. And really, I mean, most of us are aware of the American dream. And of course, the American dream is the freedom to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And lots of people are very proud to be part of that, proud to have access to that. And so I would describe the IFMC as maybe the sweet spot for stakeholders to achieve the American dream.
Awesome. I really like that. And I'm going to put a little plug in for the next Equipped newsletter that's coming out this week because your readers of that are going to hear more about that American dream with one of the IFMC employees or an employee of an ESI client. So that was a really good lead into that.
Excellent.
And you mentioned the word stakeholders, and both the mission and the vision statements of the IFMC talk about loyal stakeholders. So can you define stakeholders as it pertains to the mission, vision, values, and the IFMC, and also why the word loyal?
Sure. Typically, stakeholders are customers, employees, owners, vendors, and community government. And so that's the way we viewed that with the IFMC. And of course, the stakeholders are anyone that has a stake or can be impacted either positively or negatively by the organization. And so if we look maybe at some examples here, you know, we look at customers, and most people just assume that customers are good. And they are, but some aren't completely transparent with us. And so some competitors actually call, get prices, and then when they know what our price is, they'll quote against us using a slightly lower price. And you know, we can find those out because we can see when somebody does a lot of quoting and they never place an order. But that would be maybe a negative example of someone that really isn't a loyal stakeholder. I think a really great example of some companies that are, and folks that are loyal stakeholders really started out with Amerishred Corp. And Amerishred Corp was, this is back in the mid 80s, started out in the confidential document destruction business. And that was a fairly early stage market at that point, but there were lots of confidential documents that needed to be destroyed. I think everybody here is probably familiar with what paper shredders are. Most people have little shredders near their desk. These were a little bit bigger. These were, those next to your desk might be a quarter horsepower or a fractional horsepower. The ones that Amerishred Corp was selling and making ranged up to 200 horsepower. So these were big shredders. And because it was early stage, one of the strategies for selling those shredders and the shredding systems was to actually help customers, help people start up businesses for performing confidential document destruction. And those were some of the most appreciative customers that I think I ran into, because they really, I mean, you talk about the American dream, those were typically folks that were ambitious, were willing to work hard, had a dream of owning their own business, and Amerishred Corp really enabled that to happen. And so that, I would say, that's a positive example of a loyal stakeholder.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And I think about the community as a stakeholder too. You have the people that they really don't even know the extent of what happens within the buildings that are in the community, but they're so supportive because they get the big picture of, well, they employ a lot of people, they're bringing money into the community, economic generator, to use, one of your terms. So I think there really are these loyal stakeholders in every one of those stakeholder groups that I know I really appreciate that they're out there, and obviously you do too. So thank you for that explanation. What are some of the things that are being done? So I guess when businesses are looking at their vision and they're looking at moving closer to their mission and their vision and how close can they get to it, and you describe vision as being sort of that goal state that you may never achieve, but you're always working toward it. What are some of the things that the IFMC is doing to move closer and closer to that vision?
Well, I think there are many things, and part of that is with the values and the environment. And so it's hard to pick one or two tools or projects that really fix everything, so to speak. But probably some of the most defined initiatives really are the work we're doing with competencies and aligning the competencies that team members have with the needs of the customer or the work that needs to be done. And of course, Jackie, I know you're aware, I mean, we've got competency-based handbooks now that align the competency between the customer needs and what the team members have. We have the ESI job board, so there are a number of tools that help us align that. But it's not only the competency that people have, but also the competencies that people maybe are trying to achieve, or that may be part of their American dream. They want to get good at something. And so, of course, ESI has programs and works with folks on training to acquire those competencies. And of course, you're well aware, I mean, we've got the leadership training programs, and so there are a number of things that we're doing, but each of those individually, I don't think are as powerful as the culture and the values of the organization. And so, we've talked about the mission, which is the why the organization exists. We're talking about the vision, which is the what that we're trying to achieve. The values really are how we're achieving it. And so with the values, that really forms the environment that's referred to in can't remember if it's the mission, the vision, or the description of the IFMC, but those values really are what form that environment, and that is really powerful because I know I'm striving to try to enable people to be successful in a way that matches with their dream.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too to note that just because the culture is set up that way, it still takes an individual to want to do that and to strive for that same vision and mission and practice those core values, and that we'll talk about next month. But it really is up to the individual, but the stage is set for people to recognize and achieve success if they believe in and work toward that vision themselves. And I think sometimes that gets lost on the individual level is, well, work's not going to create it for me. They also have to take a step in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very well said and very, very important. I mean, this is not a deal where you arrive and someone bestows the American dream on you. You need to have your own dream. You need to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could have every IFMC stakeholder understand just one thing about the vision, like if the entire, I would say if we could get the whole community to understand this, what would you want everybody to understand about the vision?
Well, I think I would go back to where we started, and first off, make sure that people understand that the IFMC is not a business. It's more of a market, an economy, and that's why we call it a consortium. And so that's really an informal arrangement or informal grouping of business units and people that have aligned intentions. And so I'd want folks to understand that. And then beyond that, I would want them to understand that we are all striving to make the IFMC a sweet spot for them to find their own version of the American dream.
Yes, I like that. And I have one last question, which will probably take us to our time, but I know that this wasn't the mission and vision that was here at the very beginning of the companies, when you were making things go faster, as you've said a couple times. So at what point did this really become the vision, and at what point did you really start to see the IFMC playing this role for people and for their stakeholders?
Wow, that could be a session all by itself, Jackie. But
You have 2 minutes.
the really pivotal point for me was when we had a labor strike in 1979. Yeah, 1979. And just a real brief story. I mean, I grew up on a farm. We made hay when the sun shined. I really wasn't accustomed to working a regular schedule, working a 40-hour week. You did what you had to do. You got up early, you worked late, you did what needed to be done. And so that was really my expectation of everyone that was working in the company as well. And I hadn't developed, let's see, what would you call that? You'd probably call that emotional intelligence. I hadn't developed much of that
Yes.
yet.
Good job. Good use of that.
Yeah, and so I was really pretty unreasonable, and some people probably still think I am, but believe it, I've improved actually. But that was really a pivotal moment when after 9 months of strike, when I realized that it wasn't the team members that were causing the problem, it was me, because I just had I had expectations that were just almost impossible for a normal person to achieve, that was also trying to achieve their own American dream. And so when I realized that, it was painful. I mean, it was hard. It took some practice and adjusting, but that was the point right there where I kind of figured out that wow, these folks all have lives. They're all trying to achieve their own thing. They're all trying to climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And here I thought they were all working my dream, but turns out they weren't.
Well, that takes a little bit of swallowing some pride and admitting, for someone to admit that they maybe are more of the problem than they realize. So I think we can all say we're glad that you had that experience and we're able to kind of rethink the way that you approach the businesses, because they're still here, they're still successful, and they're helping a lot of people have those opportunities and successes. So we are at the end of our time. Do you have, as always, I'll leave final words to you. Just for everybody who's listening, we will be back in July with the values portion of the mission, vision, and values. And as always, we'll send out some notification on that. So Greg, do you have any final words that you'd like to say?
I'd just like to thank all the team members, excuse me, again, for all the hard work and all the contributions that make our success possible. I mean, it's amazing to me, the things we accomplish, and we're continuing to set all-time record order sales weeks, and I mean, amazing stuff. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for your time, and we will talk to you again in July. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.